Good evening, Alexandria Democrats. Clarence Tong here. Thank you for joining the ADC's August live stream. We are exactly 3 months from Election Day, and I hope I don't need to convince you that the stakes for this presidential election could not be higher. The direction of our country wrong for too long. That Trump represents an affront to our values, a threat to our democracy, and is probably the worst person to lead our country through this unprecedented time of crisis. And despite the horrible public health and economic toll of COVID-19, Republicans have refused to act to extend unemployment insurance for people that need it and to provide aid to cash-strapped state and local governments with the support they need, including to safely reopen our schools at the right time. We have long awaited this moment, and we can bring change if we each do our part so we can build back better. As I reported last month, the ADC has been adjusting to the new normal of campaigning during COVID. In some ways, campaigning has been turned on its head, but in other ways, it's still very similar. One of the major differences in this 2020 election is our strategy. You may recall in previous elections, massive volunteer door-to-door efforts during the GOTV, Get Out the Vote weekend, during the last 4 days of the campaign, to turn out as many voters as possible on Election Day. But we don't need to wait until Election Day. The first votes can be cast on Friday, September 18th, which is 45 days before the election. So instead of 4 days, our GOTV effort will be 45 days. Because we don't know what the COVID situation will be on Election Day, we are encouraging Alexandria voters to make use of their absentee voting options. To that end, the ADC has launched a public education campaign to make sure people know how they can vote by mail and early in person at locations across the city. In July, the ADC sent postcards to approximately 20,000 Alexandria voters, mostly age 60 and up, with simple instructions about how to vote by mail. And judging by the number of absentee requests the city has already received, Alexandria voters are responding very strongly to voting by mail. To provide some context, during the entire 2016 election, 7,629 absentee ballots were requested. As of today, the city has received at least 10,933 absentee requests. This is a certainly positive development, but we have set an ambitious goal of getting half of Alexandria voters to use their absentee options. Voting by mail is safe and easy to do. You can check your voter registration and put in your request directly to the State Board of Election website at vote.elections.virginia.gov. Understandably, some of you may be worried about whether the Postal Service can handle this surge in absentee ballots. To be clear, it's not entirely without risk, but the time frame also matters. If you put in your absentee ballot request today, the city will send you your absentee ballot by September 18th, which will give you plenty of time to mail it back or drop it off at the registrar's office. As the election gets closer, another absentee voting option is early in person. Starting on Friday, September 18th, anyone can vote early without providing any reason at the Office of Voter Registration and Elections across from City Hall, 132 North Royal Street. Voting by this method can be done during normal business hours, and it will be expanded to night and weekend hours closer to the November 3rd election. Additionally, there will be 3 in-person early voting locations closer to the election that will include Beatley Library, George Washington Middle School, and Minnie Howard campus of T.C. Williams High School. So you may be wondering, in addition to voting, what else can or should I do to help? The ADC and other nonpartisan organizations have developed printed and digital materials about absentee voting. We seek and welcome your assistance in distributing and posting this material at locations across the city of Alexandria. So if you have relationships with local businesses, HOAs or condo associations, community or religious organizations, or just know of good locations to post flyers and signs, or you want to email your friends and neighbors. Please send us a note at office@alexdems.org. A few other quick notes before moving to our special guest speakers tonight. The ADC is running a virtual phone bank to follow up on the Alexandria voters that we mailed postcards to in mid-July. If you're able to help, please email Sissy Walker at espwalker@gmail.com. And you will also be hearing a bit later in this live stream from the Biden-Warner coordinated campaign about additional ways that you can help out in this 2020 election. Our elected officials in the city have been on the front lines of responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, from supporting families in need and the economic recovery to reopening the ACPS system in a safe way. They have also been working on urgent issues like racial equity and policing reform, which was sadly thrust into the national spotlight again with the tragic deaths earlier this summer of George Floyd and other Black Americans. Tonight, we are pleased to be joined by Councilmember Kenneth Aguirre and School Board Member Michelle Reif. Kenneth is serving in his first term on council. He has been a leading advocate and champion for Alexandria families displaced by the COVID pandemic. This has included working to pass a resolution urging our federal elected officials to implement a rent and mortgage moratorium, ensuring that federal CARES funding would be used for rental assistance and to support citywide food distribution programs and small businesses. And Kenneth also leads the city's efforts on the census. Our second special guest is School Board Member Michelle. In addition to serving in her first term as a school board member, Michelle has been an active member of the ADC and our Labor Caucus. And she also has three children currently in the ACPS system. To the audience who have joined us tonight, please feel free to type in a question in the Facebook Live chat box, and we will try our best to get to your question during this session. So let's start with Kenneth. Over the past few months, the city has had a lot on its plate. You have been working to respond to the COVID pandemic, which has included supporting assistance programs and providing much-needed economic recovery measures to support families as well as businesses. And I know that you've also been working hard to get ready for this November 3rd election. So what can you tell us about what Council has been doing in regards to addressing the COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, Clarence, I just want to say thank you to you and the ADC for providing this platform. I think it's a really great way to stay in communication. And a quick shout out to the man behind the curtain, Ricardo Alfaro, for helping to make all this production possible as well. If you don't mind, I'd actually like to take a quick 30-second moment of silence for those lives that we lost in El Paso last year, because someone went very much out of their way to target Mexicans, and many lives were lost. So if you don't mind, I just want to take a quick 30-second moment of silence. Thank you. So I think, staying on the theme with elections and how important it is, it's been really sad to see the complete absence of leadership that we've had at the federal level throughout, the last 3.5 or so years. So just so imperative that we do our part to make sure we get Joe Biden elected in this next go around. I had the opportunity to speak with Angie Turner, who is the new registrar that we have here in the city of Alexandria. And I want to give a quick shout out to Anna Leader, who served the city very proudly for over 2 decades. and she just retired, I believe, last month. But she's left us in good hands with Angie. And a lot of the information that I was talking to her about, I actually asked for her to come before council. And so we should be seeing her in September. I'm not sure if it's going to be the first or the second legislative meeting, but we will have her there so that we could go over how the city's been preparing for the November election. And you did a great job of covering some of the absentee ballot stuff. And also, the safety precautions that we're taking to make sure that if you do choose to go in person to vote, that you will be in a safe environment to do so. And also, we're going to thank you to you, Clarence, because with the food distributions that we're having in the city, we're planning to also provide some of the voter registration information and some information for the absentee ballots. And I think one of the other things that we're going to be doing as a city is doing a mass mailer, basically to all the households to provide this information as well. In terms of language, it's a little bit difficult. At the state level, we really only have 3 other languages, I believe. One of them is Spanish, so we will be able to have some materials in Spanish. But if we have folks that need help in Arabic or Amharic, we're going to have to figure out some other things. But I think we're taking some pretty proactive measures, so be sure to tune in September to hear from our new registrar, Angie Turner. And also thank you to the leadership of Jack Powers and Mary Lyman, who are on the Board of Elections here in Alexandria and make up two out of 3 people on there, right? You also touched on police accountability and transparency that we're trying to see here in the city. And if you all missed it at our last couple of sessions, we decided to implement a police review board along with a review of our police policies and looking at how we can provide better data transparency. And shout out to the ADC, because back in March of 2018, we actually passed police data transparency resolution. So we were a little ahead of the game, if you will. What I'm hoping is that we'll have kind of a cheat sheet or a work plan that people will be able to easily access and see what we've been working on, because we've gotten, as you can imagine, a ton of questions saying, well, what's your use of force policy for your police? What are you doing in terms of hiring policies and all of that? So what I want to do is create a nice little chart where everybody will be able to just take a look, and we'll have some links in there. And hopefully we'll have that up either in September or October. If you haven't had a chance yet, I would definitely take a look at our police department's page now. They do have up a frequently asked questions page, which answers a lot of questions that we were getting at the beginning. But again, with the work plan, we're going to be going a lot more in depth. And the good thing is that we have a very good police department here in Alexandria, but it doesn't mean that we can't do better. And it doesn't mean that we can't also be an example for other police departments, because, if it doesn't work here in Alexandria, where else is it going to work, right? In terms of the census, when we're talking about trying to empower people and make sure that seats are being apportioned depending on our population and a myriad of other things, we've been keeping it up with our efforts. Unfortunately, the administration, again, poor leadership, they're trying to create a lot of confusion. Our end date was extended to October 31st, but a week or two ago, they've just thrown a huge wrench into the whole situation, because now they're saying that we might end September 30th. We're still trying to figure out whether or not how that's all going to work, but we're going to try and ramp up efforts, because if it is going to end September 30th, we have a long ways to go, because there are definitely certain census tracts in the city that are still hovering around 50%. In comparison to the country, Virginia is doing really well. I think we're ranked 7th right now. Here in Alexandria, we are doing a little bit better than the overall state by about a percentage. But in Northern Virginia as a whole, we're actually kind of lagging behind everybody. So there's still a lot of efforts that we need to put in to be able to, make sure that we're getting the resources that we deserve for our community, essentially for our schools, for our roads, for our first responders, hospitals. The census just touches so much in our lives. And I think the last thing I'll kind of close out with, because I'm probably going over my time a little bit already, is just the city's response and the situation with COVID-19. We are partnering with Neighborhood Health and the health department to have some targeted testing locations throughout the city. We've been ramping up the number of testing availability here in the city, so it should be easily accessible. If anybody has issues getting testing for COVID-19, please contact us. We'll be sure to get you in place so that you can get a test. Our hospitalization rates have remained low. Our beds have been pretty steady in terms of availability. We've been very fortunate here in Alexandria to have a very low death rate. That's not to diminish in any way the lives that we lost, and our condolences and our thoughts go out to all those that we have lost, not just here in Alexandria, but across the country and the world. So it's just so important that we keep on maintaining, the 6 steps that we have with washing hands, wearing masks, staying home when possible, keeping that physical distancing that we have, right, and avoiding some of these large crowds. Contact tracing isn't where we would like it to be, especially when we talk about language availability, but we're still working on that. We're kind of getting there. If you've seen some of the hand washing stations or the hand hygiene stations across the city, that's actually something that I brought up because I was listening in on a session with a council member from Seattle, and they had mentioned when if they had known then what they knew now, that they would have tried to have these hand washing stations sooner. So I'm glad that we've been able to implement that here in the city, and you can find them dispersed all across geographically. One of the other things that I've really been trying to work on too is language access. There's a lot of materials, videos, infographics. A lot of that is because, I've really been trying to push our communications team to ensure that we're not only communicating to the majority of Alexandrians, but also those pockets where we have difficulties with language and with literacy. So that's been something that we've definitely been working on. The big news, of course, is that we've been given our second tranche of money. So we initially got $13.9 million, which we used for food assistance, rental assistance, small business assistance, some money for the health department, and of course, some money for the city's own costs that we've incurred. So we're going to get another $13.9 million, and this is from the original CARES money that was being allocated to us. And we're still having our fingers crossed because we've pretty much gone through most all of that first $13.9 million. I'm sure we're going to go through the next 13.9 very quickly. So we really, really need some of this federal money from, the laws we're trying to pass in Congress. We're really hoping that that's going to go through because the locality is going to get some direct support as well, because the way it's set up, going back to the census, right? We got a certain amount of money based on how many people they said we had here in Alexandria. So another key point for why that is. We're going to do another round of business support. So I want to make sure that if you have any small business friends that they're on the lookout for that, because we still have money left over for that, and we're going to get some additional money. And I'll kind of close with how you can help, right? We're always wondering, well, I'm staying at home, I'm working, but is there any way that I can help with the situation that's going on right now? 3 things that you can look at. First one is our Act Now Relief Fund. So if you haven't heard of Act Now, it's been very excellent. They've been distributing a lot of money through community partners. So you can look them up, Act Now for Alexandria, donate some money there if you can. We have our Medical Reserve Corps, which has been really awesome, manning the phones, helping volunteer at different events. If you want to sign up for the Medical Reserve Corps, you could just Google that as well. There's some information on the Alexandria Health Department website for that. And then the last one is Volunteer Alexandria. Volunteer Alexandria has been really crucial in being able to provide additional volunteers for food distributions, for other events that are happening. So those are 3 ways that you can get involved here in Alexandria. And I think I'm way over time, so I'm going to stop there.
Well, Kanik, thank you so much for providing the update from the city, as well as sharing some ways that our members can get involved in. And I share your hope that the Senate and Congress can act and make sure that we can get the federal support we need to make sure this recovery goes as well as it can. So, Kenneth, we're going to go to Michelle, and then we'll hopefully take some questions for both of you together. So, our second special guest, School Board member Michelle Reif, is with us. So, Michelle, I just wanted to start with a question for you. I'm sure it's on many people's minds. The other day, the ACPS announced the Virtual Plus model, which I understand would provide 100% online instruction, but also provide additional resources to students, staff, and family What can you share about that effort, and what can you share about what the school board is going to be doing in the meeting later this week, and what your focus will be on in terms of making sure that the schools reopen in a safe way?
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Clarence, for inviting me here to share some updates about Alexandria City Public Schools. I just wanted to start by talking a little bit about how the pandemic has affected our school system. I think that the pandemic has really reinforced for a lot of us how critical public schools are in our communities. And I just want to thank everyone who's on this session right now for your support of public education. But ACPS did announce that we were closing school buildings on March 13th. And one of the things that was an immediate concern was the fact that 60% of our students receive free and reduced price meals. And that very first week, ACPS set up a meal distribution site. It's expanded to several sites across the city. The school board receives weekly updates. And as of July 24th, we have distributed 555,557 meals to children throughout our city. I think that our communications team has also done a great job with our ACPS at Home section of our website, which is really a wealth of information, and I would encourage folks to check it out. You can find a lot of information about our reopening planning there. We also, when we closed, we were fortunate that we sent home laptops with our students in grades 3rd through 12th grade. We had already had a one-to-one program for those grades. We did have issues with students who did not have internet access at home, and we've distributed 1,200 portable hotspots, which are called Khajiits, that we've sent home with students who do not have internet access. And I just wanted to take a minute to thank the PTAs across the city who raised $32,000 to support our Khajiit program. I also wanted to mention that you probably may have heard that Alexandria City Public Schools offered an optional 4-week summer learning experience for all students as a way to mitigate against the challenges that we're experiencing at this time. And that just wrapped up last week. From the financial standpoint, we were in our budget process when this pandemic hit. And unfortunately, we saw we had to $11.7 million we lost in projected revenue. So because so much of our budget is staff salaries and benefits, we ended up having to eliminate a planned step increase for our staff. We did receive $3.6 million in CARES Act funding, which we're using for one-time expenditures related to our response. And some of you may have heard that there's been an issue in the news with the NAACP and other states who are suing the Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, for a rule change that would basically redirect a greater portion of these funds to private schools. But I would definitely ditto what Kanik said, that you can help us by advocating for additional federal funding for K-12 education. We really could use it. As far as reopening, ACPS has been engaged in a very robust reopening planning process. We're following guidelines from the CDC and working closely with the Alexandria Health Department. I will say that our superintendent has described this as the biggest challenge he's experienced in his career. ACPS, the school division, is required to submit a reopening plan to the Virginia Department of Education on August 14th. And so our division created these cross-functional planning teams, which were committees. It was about over 150 people made up of administrators, teachers, students and parents, community members, and people with particular areas of expertise. And they've basically been working in these 2-week sprints on all facets of our operations. They've basically used these 2-week time periods to gather information, plan, and produce deliverables, and then get feedback. So it's been a very methodical, very responsive process. And I think that, that was really smart, because we saw some of our neighboring divisions that initially rolled out plans that they then had to change and adjust. We had a survey about reopening and received over 12,000 responses. We hosted a week of virtual community chats that were very well attended. And basically, these cross-functional planning teams developed prototype models that they tested through a day in the life exercises that they did. And this is all culminating in a draft plan that's going to be presented to the school board this Friday, August 7th, and the school board will be voting on that plan. And so last Friday, as you mentioned, Clarence, the superintendent kind of rolled out a sneak preview of the model that these teams determined was going to be the most feasible for our school division. So it's being called Virtual Plus. And so all students are going to receive instruction virtually. There's going to be a structured bell schedule, daily live interaction with teachers, which we call synchronous learning. And this is very popular with our parents and our students. We are also providing enhanced and formalized social and emotional supports and additional academic supports for our most vulnerable students, which will involve both small groups and sometimes even a one-to-one support. We're also expanding our technology resources. We're going to be distributing laptops to all second graders, as well as tablets to our first graders and kindergartners. ACPS, when this plan is shared out, is going to include information about childcare options that are available through our community partners for families who would like to try to access that. We're also going to continue with our meal distribution program. And the first day of school is going to be September 8th, the day after Labor Day. And we're going to be using this Virtual Plus model for the first quarter. And then there's going to be a committee set up to reevaluate our constraints every 9 weeks and determine if we can transition into a different model, such as a hybrid model. So basically, we are currently, this week, we're going to be, again, getting that information and having a school board meeting where we're going to discuss, all facets of this plan. And so I really encourage everyone to participate. You can go on our website. If you search for school board, you will find out how to access the meeting live, or you can watch it recorded. And then in addition to that, we're having 2 public hearings this week on Thursday evening, August 6th at 7 p.m., as well as Friday during our school board meeting at noon. So you can just go again to the website and you can sign up to either, you can submit written comments, or you can also make virtual public comments during the meeting. So that's kind of an update, and I look forward to, like the rest of our community, getting a lot more details this coming week about the plan.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. And thank you for sharing your update and also telling us about these public hearings where folks in the community can provide input into this school reopening process. So let's switch gears for a second. I have a question. I think it's been on the minds of some of our Democratic activists in the city. The school board is considering renaming the T.C. Williams High School, named after a longtime former superintendent who opposed desegregation, believing that Black and white students should attend separate schools. And I think for many, it would be an important and symbolic step to help advance racial justice in our city to change the name. So what can you say, Michelle, about that particular process that may be ongoing, and what should folks expect, moving forward?
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for that question. I agree. That's a topic that's a lot of folks in our community are very interested in. And you already told the story of T.C. Williams, so I don't need to do that. But the school board has a policy and regulation on naming and renaming our schools. And this policy says that Alexandria residents can petition the school board to change the name of an existing school. And so we did receive such a petition on June 15th. It was signed by over 100 Alexandria City residents, what's required in the policy. And so according to our policy, the school board then can decide whether or not to pursue the request, which we did vote to pursue the request on July 10th. And the policy spells out that the next steps are the superintendent develops a process for engagement, and this culminates in a report with recommendations that he makes to the school board, and then we would vote on whatever the outcome will be. So the motion that we passed states that the engagement is going to begin in the fall, and the recommendations will be presented by the spring. And so we have a work session, the school board has a work session scheduled on August 27th, where we are going to hear more about this process that the superintendent is proposing, and we'll be just further discussing it at that time. So if you're interested, I encourage you to stay tuned on August 27th for more details about how you can get involved and make your voice heard as we move through this process.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. I think at this point we can open it up to the participants for any questions that you either have for Kennick or Michelle. While you think about those questions and type in the chat, I've got one back for Kennick. Kennick, you started speaking about the need for like police transparency, data to help bring forward policing reforms. Last month, your colleague, council member Seifeldine, talked about the need for civilian community police review board. Like, what are the things that we should be doing as a city to make sure that tragic instances like what happened with George Floyd don't happen here in Alexandria?
Well, I think, implementing this police review board is one of those steps in that direction, right? I think reviewing all of our policies, not just use of force, but also our hiring policies. There isn't, one silver bullet, right? There isn't one magic item that's going to get this all done. I think it has to be a combination of everything, right? We talk about data transparency, we talk about body cams, we talk about this police review board. And I think the other thing that this chief has been really good about is community policing, right? What we need is relationships with our officers, with our community members. I think that is going to be one of the biggest things out of everything, because when one of the difficulties is sometimes we're trying to humanize other humans. Because sometimes, whether in the media or in other people's minds, people of color need to be humanized because they don't necessarily see them as human. They see, they could sustain more pain, or they're going to be more, they're going to do more evil things or something, which we all know is ridiculous, and the numbers prove it. So when we are building relationships within the community between our officers and our community members, I think that's going to be one of the biggest steps that we could take. And we can't just do it, as adults. We have to start with children. There used to be a program that the city had years ago where officers will come and either read books. And I know the officers still read books to the kids now, but it was a lot more involved, and they would come and hang out with the kids at the elementary and middle school level. And, I think we need more of that. But everything, you can't just do one thing. It has to be supported all around, because that accountability has to be there. So if an officer does something unfortunate with a use of force or something else, then there needs to be policies in place to deal with that. And then, of course, we have to look at the legal system as well to be able to support any policies that we have to make sure that there are consequences, essentially. Because a lot of times, and for many years, right, we would see that a person of color, a black man would be murdered, a black child would be murdered, and nothing would happen to the officer. We're still waiting for something to happen with the officers with Breonna Taylor, the murderer of Tamir Rice. I mean, I think he just got fired like this year or something, which is absolutely ridiculous.
Oh, absolutely. And this is very important to get right and to meet this moment in our country right now. I actually don't see any other questions. I'm sorry if for some reason it didn't come across in the feed for me, but I wanted to thank both Kennick and Michelle for joining us tonight. I think you've provided us with really valuable updates and input in terms of kind of how we can think about getting involved and making an impact in our community, particularly with this really unprecedented COVID-19 situation. So thanks again for being part of this. I think we're going to move to continue on with our political speaker that we have who's been waiting patiently with us. So our next guest speaker is...
Thank you all.
Oh, thank you, Kanik. Our next guest speaker is Democratic congressional nominee in Virginia's 1st District, Qasim Rashid. He is working to unseat a longtime Republican. For those who don't know, the 1st District is just a bit south of Alexandria. It's a pretty vast suburban and rural district spanning from Prince William County to coastal communities in the Northern Neck and Middle Peninsula. Qasim is an immigrant, a proud American Muslim, a human rights lawyer, and he just successfully ran in a very competitive primary election. Qasim, congrats on your very impressive election, and thanks for taking the time to join us tonight. So I'm guessing most people don't know who you are yet in Alexandria, so please tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running.
Well, thank you for having me. It's such a privilege to be here. And one person I do know is Kanik. It's good to see you again, old friend. We got a chance to connect last year. And so before I even go into anything, I just want to thank everyone who's here and giving us a few minutes to speak. We're extraordinarily excited about our race. We've got a phenomenal team and a clear path to victory. And it's going to really come down to how well we can activate our supporters and ensure that every single person is voting. When we vote, we win. And we're very excited about that. So I was going to share very quickly a little about my background and kind of where we want to go from here and how you can get involved in our campaign. As mentioned, I'm an immigrant to this country. My family immigrated here when I was about 4 years old. We left Pakistan in significant part escaping religious persecution. And here in the United States, my parents are teachers. For them, this is about us being involved and immersed. And the one lesson I can remember from my childhood, more than anything else, is this aspect of service to humanity. It was ingrained in us. And as I got older, we certainly had our struggles. I remember living in Section 8 housing and a roach-infested one-bedroom apartment and all that struggle. But out of that came a lot of good. My younger siblings today are successful in the business world. My older brother is a U.S. Marine veteran. And me, with my wife's guidance and support, I went into human rights law. And I've been a human rights lawyer for about a decade now, working on supporting women who are survivors of domestic and sexual violence, working with children from lower income communities to expand healthcare and education access. I've worked extensively on religious freedom issues, supporting persecuted Christians, Jews, atheists in many Muslim majority countries, and certainly have worked extensively on criminal justice reform. And so I'm running for office now to take my advocacy as a human rights lawyer and transform it into policy. One of the things that is really rewarding about human rights law is you have the opportunity to support people who have otherwise been marginalized or denied basic justice. But one of the frustrating things about that is you begin to recognize that there are broken systems or unjust systems that continue to harm people. And having worked now in the trenches on the front lines for so long, I can see and I understand very intimately and very painfully in some respects where those injustices are, where those disconnections are, and how we need to change our policies to get back on track and fulfill what our Constitution talks about: equal justice under the law, the ability to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'm running against a Republican incumbent who's going for his 7th term. He is the epitome of Trump. He just says it nicer, but everything from caging children and supporting that, to voting against the Violence Against Women's Act, to supporting the Muslim ban, to this guy even bought himself pharmaceutical stock in COVID-19 treatment in February, and then told us repeatedly that it's low risk and not spreading, so don't worry. Just every conceivable terrible decision you could make as a public servant, he's done so proudly. And we're at a point now where we have a phenomenal team. Our campaign manager, Ayodele Okewo, worked on Mayor Pete's campaign for the last year. Our funding director comes from Congressman Swalwell's team. Our organizing director is, knows Virginia inside and out. We just have a really strong team all around. And the ask that I have of everyone here, of course, is if you want to volunteer and get involved, we definitely need you, because the more folks we have making calls and sending texts and writing postcards, the better. And likewise, because we don't take any corporate money at all, we're heavily focused on grassroots fundraising. So if you have capacity to donate, whether it's $5 or the maximum of $2,800, whatever's in your bandwidth, we'd love to have your support there. as well. So that's my high-level overview. I want to be sensitive to folks' time, but happy to take any questions or field any thoughts that folks have about our campaign.
Thank you, Qasim. And I just wanted to make sure that we gave a shout out to Io Deli as well, because he actually managed Councilman Seifeldin's campaign a few years back. So we got to know him a little bit. A great guy, and I'm sure you're in very good hands.
We are.
So in addition to, I guess, fundraising, what are other things that folks can do to help you?
Well, and so that was the first thing that I mentioned from a volunteer standpoint. Yep. We've got a robust team of volunteers. Max Schatzen is our organizing director, and he's running the show there. And so he's hosting regular trainings for folks to get involved with, whether it's through phone banking or sending text messages or writing postcards. And honestly, we're not so rigid that we say this is the only thing you can do. If you've got a superpower we don't know about, let us know, and we'll get that involved. Different folks are doing different things. One of the initiatives that our campaign has launched, we actually launched this in January, and now we've expanded it because of the pandemic, is our Compassion Through Action initiative, where we're providing food and water and now masks to folks who are struggling and don't have access. And through the primary, we had served just over 1,000 people in the first district with food, water, masks, just basic necessities of life. And again, that's kind of a reflection of our philosophy that if you have compassion for your community, compassion for your neighbor, it can't just be an empty word. We need to exemplify it. We need to show what that compassion looks like. And so to that end, if you go to our website, rashidforva.com, you can click on Compassion Through Action and either sign up as a volunteer to provide support to those who are struggling, or if you are struggling and you just need a helping hand, you can ask us and we'll do everything in our power to provide that support. And this is not something we're doing for Democrats or liberals. This is something we're doing for people. So whether you are our supporter or not is irrelevant to whether we're going to support you if you're in need of help.
That sounds like a really great message, Qasim. And I think that's it's really important to keep in mind with people facing such great challenges right now. Before I let you go, I just wanted to ask kind of like an electoral question. Many folks, on the call are, Democratic activists. We're really interested in kind of knowing how the politics shape up. So the first district, it has been a Republican held like for quite a long time. Yep. It's exurban, rural. Do you think that, that the increased turnout from this year in presidential election will help you? I know that, in 2018 in the midterms, we were able to successfully get a few Democratic congresswomen elected, and that strategy looked a certain way. I imagine it's similar, or is it different? Like, how would you size it up?
So, we're basing it off of two really important metrics. One is ensuring that we're doing voter outreach, and that's where, I just kind of reemphasize the volunteer aspect of it and the donation aspect of it. This really is a matter of getting in front of people. We've seen a significant number of conservatives reach out to us and tell us they're voting for us over Rob Whitman because they're just tired of his cruel policies and his lack of actual support. Broadband is a huge issue in this district. In 13 years, he hasn't passed a single bill for broadband, and now it's almost catastrophic for children in the rural communities, for small businesses, hospitals, farmers. But there's also a significant element of just a mind shift over the last several years. So I'll give you a couple of quick, statistics to back that up. This was a district that Terry McAuliffe, when he won the governorship in 2013, he lost this district by about 22 points. And the shift has been so consistent that by 2016, that 22-point loss by the top Democrat was only a 16-point loss. In 2017, it was a 12-point loss. In 2018, Tim Kaine lost this district by 1 point. And then we saw last year Virginia flipped blue in the House and the Senate, and several of those flips, especially on the delegate level and on the school board, county chair level, supervisor level, dozens of those happened within the first district as well. And so we've seen this massive shift happening. And to get within 1 point in 2018 and then see what happened last year is really inspiring. And so for us, this is really going to be about turnout, especially folks who have felt disenfranchised and marginalized, people of color. We're a majority a women district as well. And so being able to demonstrate just how abysmal my opponent's record has been on women's issues, everything from voting against the ERA, voting against equal pay for women, voting against the Violence Against Women Act. I mean, on every conceivable thing, he's just been absolutely, and don't even get me started on his draconian view of reproductive health. So, we see a very clear path. And this is why I emphasize we have a chance to do something that hasn't been done in 42 years. And that is flip this district blue. And what I can say with a lot of confidence is that once this district goes blue, it's not going to go red again. And we're going to have then the entire eastern part of Virginia blue, and it's going to stay blue permanently. And it's going to set us up really well for 2021 when we have governor's elections coming up, because now we're going to have another part of Virginia that has traditionally been favorable for Republican governors. Now it's going to go again towards a Democratic governor. So the ramifications aren't just for this year, but they're also for the coming years as well.
Qasim, I'm glad you pointed it out, and it's extremely exciting. Do you think of that prospect to, have more of Virginia that have been going traditionally Republican, a turn in our favor? Well, that's all time that we have tonight, Qasim. Thank you so much for joining us, taking the time out of your busy schedule, and sharing your story. And best of luck to you, in the, I guess, election 3 months from today.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. And I said, last thing, if you do want to visit our website, it's just my last name, Rashid, Rashid, forva.com. Thank you all. And don't hesitate to reach out if we can be of any support too.
Great. Thank you, Qasim.
Thank you.
So staying on, supporting Virginia Democrats running in competitive congressional races, I just wanted to mention that our Democrats to Go team has been already hard at work supporting Virginia Democrats running in competitive 2020 elections. This has included making over 1,000 phone calls to support the re-elections of Congresswoman Elaine Luria and Abigail Spanberger. Dems to Go also held a fundraiser for Congresswoman Luria last month, raising more than $4,200. And they will be working on an event for Dr. Cameron Webb, the Democratic nominee in the Virginia 5th District, soon. But they've asked me to relay something to you very specific. They would like your help to volunteer to help make calls in August and September to voters in some of these swing districts. So please contact them. They can be reached at dems2go@gmail.com or on their website, democratstogo.org. And our final speaker tonight is Adam from Biden Warner Coordinated Campaign. He's here to tell us about the 2020 election efforts and how I'm no stranger to Alexandria. I remember meeting him when he worked for Senator Kaine back in 2018. And welcome back, Adam. And please let us know what's going on.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much, Clarence, for inviting me here to speak. And a huge shout out to Ricardo for a very professionally done live stream. So thank you both. My name is Adam Kubisky. I'm the regional field director for the Coordinated Campaign here in Northern Virginia. If you're unfamiliar with the Coordinated Campaign, it is the combined campaigns of all of our Democratic candidates who are on the ballot this November. So obviously Joe Biden at the top of the ticket, Senator Mark Warner, who's running for re-election, And in Northern Virginia, we've got a great slate of candidates for our congressional races, Representative Don Beyer, Representative Connolly, and in our region, we also have Representative Wexton. So this has already been touched on a lot already, but we're 92 days away until the end of the election. That's 92 days away to replace this president, hopefully pick up the Senate as well, and hopefully get new friends in Congress. And those 92 days are really our opportunity as staffers and as volunteers to talk to as many voters as possible and to get the message out about this election and why it's so important. One of the most effective things that people can do to increase the turnout in November is door-to-door canvassing, which obviously this year we're not doing. So we're doing the next best option, which is phone banking. We have reoccurring weekly Zoom phone banks where you can get trained and start making calls right away. Every Tuesday at 3:30, you can do that. You can also make phone calls on your own time any day of the week. And I'll drop a link in the Facebook chat for folks to be able to do that. Last but not least, we do have a field organizer in Alexandria as well. His name is Donovan Hatcher, who's currently off today, which is why I'm here speaking on his behalf. But I'll drop his email as well in the chat, and I really encourage everyone to shoot him an email, set up a one-on-one meeting. I know he'd be happy to talk to all of you and hear, your story, why you're fighting for Democrats this year, and you can learn more about how to get involved with Democrats as well. So last thing I'll just say, and then I'll drop those in the chat, is you can reach me at my first name dot last name, which is adam.kubisky, K-U-B as in boy, I-S-K-E. There it is on the screen for you, at 2020victory.com. So once again, that's adam.kubisky at 2020victory.com. And you can also find all volunteer events with the coordinated campaign at mobilize.us/VA victory. And that's where you can sign up, not just for Northern Virginia, but some of our other races as well, if you'd like to make some calls out of Alexandria. Of course, I always love to plug phone banking in Alexandria because we do need folks here in Northern Virginia to turn out and offset the rest of the state so that we can deliver this for Biden and Warner. But you'll find all the links there. And just thank you so much, Clarence, again, for inviting me.
Well, Adam, thanks again for joining us here tonight. And to everyone, I know that we've bombarded you with a lot of information, a lot of different opportunities to get involved in the campaign and to support the ADC efforts for absentee voting. Again, thank you, Ricardo, for making tonight possible. And I hope that you all will, stay in touch with us and participate in our activities and our upcoming events. So thanks so much, and have a great night.